Welcome to Royal Daily Report, your ultimate source for explosive royal investigations that others refuse to touch. I'm your host, and tonight we bring you the most shocking confession in royal history. Meghan Markle's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealing could destroy everything we thought we knew about her pregnancies. This is the investigation that will change the royal world forever. Stay with us for this earth-shattering report. Trevor Engelson is not a dramatic man. He's not the type to seek headlines or chase the spotlight. After Meghan left him, he rebuilt his life in silence. A new marriage, 3 children, and a career he carved out without ever mentioning her name. He didn't want conflict. He didn't want revenge. He wanted peace, which is why his first confession hits with the force of a falling chandelier, according to an intermediary close to Trevor during their marriage. Meghan underwent a medical procedure, a hysterectomy, that made natural pregnancy impossible. It was a private matter, something only a spouse would know, something he assumed would remain sealed forever. But years later, when her royal pregnancies became global events, Trevor watched from the outside as rumors swirled and were dismissed. People called critics cruel for questioning anything. They said Meghan was being bullied. They said anyone who didn't believe the perfect story was heartless. Trevor stayed silent. He stayed respectful. He stayed out of it. But as time passed, as the story grew more theatrical, more polished, more disconnected from the woman he once knew, he felt a responsibility. Not for attention, but for truth. Because if the world was being shown a fairy tale, he was one of the few people who had seen the pages before the rewrite. And his first truth, it changes everything. Make sure to subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now and smash that like button for this explosive confession. Years before she ever met Harry, Meghan was an actress struggling to climb the Hollywood ladder. She took small roles, bit parts, anything she could to get her foot through the next door. One of those roles, Trevor recalls, was in a low-budget soap opera where Meghan was supposed to play a pregnant woman. The writers eventually changed their minds, and the storyline was scrapped. But Meghan didn't treat it like a throwaway part. She studied the role, she practiced the walk. She learned how to cradle a belly, how to shift her hips, how to widen her stance to sell the illusion. She practiced facial expressions, the tender smiles, the soft frowns, the careful breaths that actresses use to give the impression of new life within. It was acting. It was training. It was a rehearsal she took seriously. So years later, when Trevor watched Meghan on global royal walkabouts, he felt a strange wave of déjà vu. The gestures were the same, the movements identical, the belly-holding habit unmistakably a practiced pose. The public thought she was glowing. Trevor thought she was repeating an old script. That was the moment everything clicked for him. What the world believed was instinct was something she had perfected years before the cameras ever arrived. Her pregnancies were not just personal milestones. They were performances executed with precision and delivered to an audience of millions. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Royal Daily Report to stay updated on this bombshell investigation. Before Meghan ever became a duchess, before she ever stood in front of cheering crowds and global cameras, Trevor says she mastered one skill better than any acting class could teach: the power of tears on command. According to people who knew their marriage, Meghan had an uncanny ability to switch her emotions on and off like a stage light. One moment she could be arguing, calm, and collected. The next, within seconds, her voice would tremble, her eyes would glisten, and tears would stream down her face as if her heart had been broken in real time. No build-up, no struggle, just instant emotion. Trevor didn't see these tears as a sign of hurt. He saw them as a tool. Whenever a conversation turned uncomfortable, whenever accountability got too close, whenever she needed sympathy, she would cry. And just like that, the entire discussion flipped. She was the victim. Trevor was the problem, and the truth got lost under a pile of soggy tissues. Years later, when the world watched Meghan dab the corner of her eye during big interviews, even when there was no tear to wipe, Trevor recognized the pattern. He had seen this before. He had lived in this pattern. This wasn't vulnerability. This wasn't sadness. According to him, it was performance art sharpened over years of using emotion to control the narrative in her personal life. It is one thing to act in front of a camera. It is another to use the same techniques in real relationships. Trevor began realizing that with Meghan, everything could be staged, even the feelings. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report now and hit that like button to support our groundbreaking investigations. Trevor never went public. He never sold a story. He never sat for an interview. But people who heard his quiet warnings say he hinted that Meghan had faced private medical issues that were far more serious than the public ever realized. Issues that could make a natural pregnancy impossible. For years, those hints didn't make sense. They sounded dramatic, maybe even personal. But then Samantha Markle, Meghan's sister, broke her silence. And suddenly Trevor's old mysterious warnings snapped into place, like puzzle pieces, finally finding their match. Because if Meghan really did undergo a hysterectomy at just 28 years old, something Samantha urges the world to consider, then Trevor's cryptic comments weren't bitterness. They weren't exaggeration. They were foreshadowing. And now, with everything that has come to light, Trevor's distant words almost feel like the quiet alarm that went ignored until now. Once Samantha's statement hit the air, people didn't need to look far. The strange moments had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. The timelines never quite flowed naturally. One day, Meghan appeared without a bump, and just weeks later, she appeared heavily pregnant. Her belly shape changed dramatically from event to event, sometimes high, sometimes low, sometimes round, sometimes oddly flat. The children themselves seemed to slip quickly out of public view, almost like the palace needed time to rearrange the story before the world asked too many questions. Even official articles meant to celebrate the pregnancies offered big claims, but almost no real details. No medical confirmations, no hospital records, no photos or mentions from the usual royal sources who documented every royal birth with clockwork precision. And every time people tried to follow the breadcrumbs, they led back to the same shadow: surrogacy. Now, surrogacy isn't wrong. It isn't shameful. It's a beautiful gift for families who cannot carry children. But inside the royal family, where bloodlines and birth procedures determine titles, positions, and centuries of tradition, surrogacy isn't simple. It changes everything. Combine that with Samantha's claims of a hysterectomy, and the story begins to tilt in a direction few ever imagined. Because if Meghan could not carry a child, then the pregnancies the world watched were never real. They were presentations, and someone else was doing the real work behind the curtain. Make sure you're subscribed to Royal Daily Report and have smashed that like button for more shocking revelations. That someone else eventually stepped forward. Not trembling, not hiding, not whispering, she stepped into the light with confidence. A woman known only as DL. Her first sentence landed like thunder. I carried Archie and I carried Lilibet. DL didn't claim to be a donor. She didn't say she offered help out of kindness. She said she was the full surrogate, the woman who experienced the contractions, the symptoms, the ultrasounds. While Meghan performed a pregnancy for the cameras, according to DL, she was promised privacy and protection, but instead was treated like an object, not a partner, not a mother. I was treated like a vessel. She spoke with the kind of calm that doesn't come from anger. It comes from certainty. She wasn't telling a story to hurt anyone. She was telling a story because she said she could no longer carry the burden of silence, especially after the secrecy contract she signed failed to protect or respect her role. And in that moment, the mystery shifted. It was no longer about speculation, no longer about odd photos or strange timelines. It became about two women living two different pregnancies at the same time. One hidden, one performed, and the truth that could no longer stay buried. Hit that subscribe button and like this video right now to stay informed with Royal Daily Report. Once DL stepped forward, the entire story shifted from whispers to structure. Because DL didn't just talk about feelings or impressions, she described a system, a carefully planned arrangement that created two opposite versions of the same pregnancy. The first timeline was the one the world saw. Meghan stepping out in glowing outfits, cradling a bump that seemed to grow and shrink like it had a life of its own. The photographs, the charity visits, the polished, practiced smiles. The second timeline, it never appeared in front of cameras. It happened inside a fertility clinic in Beverly Hills, where DL says she walked through private entrances and sat in rooms where her name wasn't spoken out loud, only written in coded numbers on medical charts. According to DL, she was approached only weeks after Harry and Meghan's wedding. There were meetings, contracts, and instructions that made the pregnancy feel less like a miracle and more like a secret project. DL explained that her IVF cycle began before Meghan ever announced she was expecting Archie. The embryo transfer happened almost exactly when the palace released the big royal baby news. She described how her first trimester symptoms, fatigue, nausea, dizziness, matched perfectly with Meghan's first public bump debut. While Meghan posed for cameras, DL says she was the one feeling the baby kick, while Meghan's due dates circulated through newspapers. Dell says her doctors gave her nearly identical dates in quiet exam rooms. 2 pregnancies, 2 women, 2 stories running at the same time. And according to DL, only one of them was happening inside an actual body. The other, it was happening inside the public eye. Don't miss any updates, subscribe to Royal Daily Report, and like this video right now. If DL had only spoken, the world might have dismissed her as someone chasing attention. But that wasn't what she brought. She brought papers, a trail, a timeline made of ink, signatures, and dates that she claims belonged to a private fertility clinic with strict confidentiality rules. She revealed appointment logs stamped with her patient number, embryo implantation schedules that matched Meghan's pregnancy announcements almost to the day, physician notes describing fetal development timelines that lined up with the months Meghan wore specific maternity outfits. Then came the biggest shock: 2 ultrasound scans, each clearly labeled with DL's ID, one from 2019, one from 2020, both showing pregnancies that matched the exact periods when Meghan said she was expecting Archie and Lilibet. There was no guessing, no maybe, no blurry screenshots or hearsay, just timestamps, measurements, dates, and signatures. DL didn't stop there. She showed bank statements. Quiet wire transfers from shell companies, she said, were tied to Meghan and Harry's financial managers. The payments came monthly, always in similar amounts, always from the same pattern of redirected accounts. But according to DL, these payments didn't all arrive. Some were delayed, some were skipped, some were quietly reduced, and then came the most intimidating document of all. The NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, she says, was designed to silence her forever. Thick, legal, final. DL says the contract threatened financial destruction if she ever spoke out. But when her lawyers reviewed it, they discovered something surprising. Parts of the NDA weren't enforceable outside the US, and that loophole became the single reason DL felt brave enough to break her silence. Now, her evidence wasn't emotional, it wasn't dramatic, it was procedural, a paper trail that moves the story from rumor to record. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report now and smash that like button for more exclusive royal investigations. Until DL spoke, most people believed one version of the story, that Meghan led and Harry followed, that he was simply supporting his wife's decisions, not guiding them. But DL's account turns that idea upside down. According to her, Harry wasn't a clueless bystander. He was present. DL says Harry attended her medical appointments, sitting quietly in private rooms behind tinted windows and using back entrances meant for high-profile clients. She claims he signed documents that acknowledged her role, approved medical steps, and ensured everything was timed to match Meghan's public appearances. He looked me in the eye, DL said, calm, certain, not dramatic, just sure. If that is true, then this wasn't Meghan's secret. It was their secret. And now, according to insiders close to Harry's circle, the weight of that secret is pulling him apart. They describe him snapping at staff, cutting people out of his life, and living with a constant fear that someone will leak something he cannot control. He reportedly checks for threats everywhere. Not physical threats, but truths. Truths he can no longer outrun. The prince, who once demanded privacy, is now drowning in the one thing privacy was meant to hide. Make sure to like and subscribe to Royal Daily Report for the truth others won't report. When the palace first heard DL's claims, it wasn't a scandal they feared. It was a crisis. A crisis rooted not in gossip, but in the rules that hold the monarchy together. Royal succession laws are simple and strict. A child must be born of the mother's body to be automatically included in the line of succession. Surrogacy can be used, but only if it is formally declared with full transparency. No secrets, no shortcuts, no private arrangements hidden behind PR smiles. And yet Archie and Lilibet were granted royal titles and positions as heirs. If DL is telling the truth, then no official surrogacy was ever disclosed to the monarchy, parliament, or the British public. That means the issue isn't personal, it's constitutional. Behind the scenes, Advisors are reportedly asking the kinds of questions no palace ever wants to face. Did anyone inside the institution know a surrogate was involved? Were documents altered to hide the arrangement? Has the line of succession already been compromised? And how do you correct a royal record once it's been sealed, celebrated, and accepted worldwide? One former palace figure put it bluntly, "The danger is not the surrogacy. The danger is the deception." Surrogacy does not break the monarchy, but deception can. And that is exactly why the palace is now operating under a silence that feels heavier than any statement they could ever release. Hit that like button and subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now. While Meghan and Harry hold their silence and the palace retreats behind locked doors, DL is not slowing down. What began as a quiet confession has become a growing movement of documents, testimonies, and legal preparation. DL says she has more records, more correspondence, more pieces of a timeline that the world hasn't seen yet. Networks are calling. Lawyers are drafting statements. Her team is preparing a release strategy that could reach global audiences, not in whispers, but in clarity. And then there is her final, most explosive threat, a public DNA test live on camera with independent experts. "If I'm lying," she says, "the world will know in minutes. But if I'm not, they will have to explain everything." This single challenge is what reportedly has Meghan's PR team frozen. It's what has Harry unraveling. It's what has the palace scrambling to predict outcomes they fear they cannot control. Because no amount of media spin, no polished interview, no carefully worded press release can erase a DNA test. If DL stands beside Archie and Lilibet, and the results match, the story doesn't just change, it explodes. And even now, the silence from everyone involved feels like an admission of how close that explosion is. Subscribe and like right now to Royal Daily Report for more breaking investigations. This story began as a royal romance, a sparkling tale of love, escape, and reinvention. But behind the perfect photos and polished smiles, something far heavier was building, waiting for the moment when silence could no longer contain the truth, pushing against it. Now all the threads that once felt scattered are weaving together. Samantha's quiet warning, DL's medical records, the 2 timelines, the ultrasound stamped with her name, the financial trail, the NDA that demanded silence, Harry's alleged involvement, the palace's constitutional fear, the looming DNA test that could rewrite royal history. These pieces are no longer lying separately, they're colliding. And for the first time, the palace, the Sussexes, and the entire royal narrative stand at the edge of a moment they cannot script, edit, or avoid. A moment where truth, unfiltered and undeniable, prepares to take center stage. If DL steps forward with a live DNA test, if the evidence aligns, if the timelines hold, then the fairy tale won't fade quietly. It will collapse loud, sudden, and irreversible. Because the next chapter of this story isn't controlled by Meghan or Harry or palace advisors. It isn't shaped by PR teams or polished interviews. It isn't molded by imagery or storytelling. The next chapter belongs to the truth itself, and the truth is already knocking on the door with the force of a storm that cannot be stopped. This isn't the end of the story. It's the moment before the lightning strikes. And when it does, everything changes. This has been Royal Daily Report, bringing you the most explosive confession in royal history. Thank you for watching this exclusive investigation into Trevor Engelson's shocking revelations and DL's earth-shattering evidence. If you found this story mind-blowing, please hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel for more breaking royal news and exclusive investigations that expose the truth. Share this video with everyone who needs to know what's really happening behind the royal curtain. Make sure to turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we post the next bombshell update. We'll continue following this constitutional crisis as the DNA test approaches. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected with Royal Daily Report. Remember, we bring you the investigations that will change history.